You've been lying to your daddy, boy, and you know you shouldn't lie to your daddy. It's gonna stop. Who's your daddy? Come on, you know who your daddy is. Who's your daddy? Dargo, tell him who his daddy is.
I'm your daddy.
That's right.
Welcome to ScapeChatz, episode 27. I'm Allen, and I'm joined today, as always, by the delicious piece of electromagnetic candy himself, Magellan. This week, we watched Season 3, Episode 7, Thanks for Sharing, and Episode 8, Green-Eyed Monster. Thanks for Sharing was written by Clavin C. Harris, directed by Ian Barry, and it aired June 15th, 2001 in the United States. John, holy shit, like, woo. We started with a woo last week, and I think we're just gonna start again with a woo, because, like, we're in it. We're in the good Farscape now.
Yeah,
this
sure
is
feels
real
like
life.
it.
Yeah. What did you think of Thanks for Sharing, specifically?
I liked it. Let me elaborate.
Please do.
Yeah, I thought I was kind of... So last week we were talking about how... What was the episode called that was controversial?
Eat Me?
Eat Me. How it was controversial, and I was saying that the Farscape Encyclopedia Project was linking to a review on Farscape World that talked about it. So
right.
I read the beginning of the Farscape World review for this episode before I watched, and it slightly influenced my opinion, but in the opposite direction. The review was saying that this episode, it's very obvious that they're working towards trying to create the split that happens. Like, they already have the ending in mind of the crews have to separate at some point. And so it feels like the rest of the episode is working towards that point. And that there is merit to that, but I think it doesn't speak to the fact that the Planet A-plot of this episode was actually pretty cool.
It was one of the cooler Planet A-plots for sure, and very memorable, like the visuals. My first note here is solid cold open, lots of leather and lots of punching people. Because the episode starts with Dargo and Shiana and Rigel on a planet, and they're trying to wheel and deal their way to getting some chromextin, which they need to heal Talyn, because Grace and Talyn appeared back in Eat Me, and they were like, Talyn's super injured, and chromextin is like some mysterious MacGuffin substance that'll heal him, and they're doing these deals, and then Shiana gets
it comes in Ziploc bags.
It looks like Pop Rocks in Ziplocs.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me. And they're doing that, and then she gets propositioned by these two dudes. Dargo basically threatens them, and she's like, I didn't want to start any trouble, but whoops, we started trouble. And then it turns out at least one of them is like the prince of this society. They all have weird names. They're all named Rinnick. So I think that guy is Rinnick Tolven. And then his dad is Rinnick Pralanoth. And we learn about his sister later, Rinnick Sarova. And they're basically the three like main characters in the A-plot on the planet.
I'm just going to call them Dad, Boy, and Lady.
Yep, that'll... I was calling her Lady for a while, and then I called her Aliens. So, you know, there's a fun turn there.
Yeah.
I will say immediately, though, I missed Grace, because he kind of takes the helm of the B-plot, which involves him and Aaron's son trying to negotiate how we're going to deal with Talyn and what Grace found on Talyn, or what Talyn found, I guess, in terms of that like data pad.
Yes, so I think they were able to like hack into Peacekeeper records somehow.
I see.
Space hacking.
Gotta love that space hacking. And I should mention that you were talking about the split earlier, and that is referring to the fact that this show is no longer like just splitting its A and B plot, it's splitting its episodes from here on out. At least for a while. I don't know how long that's going to be a thing. Between the Crichton that is with Aaron's son and Grace, and the Crichton that hangs out with Dargo and Shiana.
Sure, we can talk about that when we get to Green-Eyed Monster.
Yeah. But for now, we get the scene where Aaron's son is like, alright, fellas, y'all both have the same shitty sense of fashion. Let's distinguish you two and give one of you a shitty V-neck, and the other one can have a shitty vest. And we can both be shitty, but in different, unique, fun ways. And so the Farscape Encyclopedia Project refers to them as John Black, which is the one in the vest, and John Green, which is the one that sticks with Aaron. I think. I guess we can use those names for now.
Sure, that works.
What's smart about the way they write them, though, is it's not super important. Like, they are distinct characters, but it's not, like, essential that you know which one. Like, this guy has his own personality, and this one has a separate personality.
Mm-hmm.
It just matters who they're with and who they're interacting with. So for me, it's more like the Talyn Crichton and Moya Crichton, basically.
Right, because they haven't had time to distinguish themselves, and they wouldn't even necessarily... Like, if you switched where they were, they'd act the same way.
Right, exactly, and they get into that. I forgot to read the plot summary, though, just real quickly for people who like the sort of one-paragraph summary of the episode.
Yeah.
Let's get to that. Grace lies critically ill, and Talyn severely wounded as the two Crichtons struggle to come to terms with each other's existence. Moya is transfusing Talyn to keep him alive, but the gunship's only hope is that Dargo, Chiana, and Rigel will be able to acquire some Cremexton from the locals on Canvia. While Dargo and Rigel are negotiating purchase of the drug, Chiana receives some unwanted attention. Dargo steps in to defend her, and they unwittingly create a political situation that jeopardizes the transaction. While Rigel attempts to talk his way into a solution, Grace recovers consciousness. He explains that Peacekeeper Retrieval Squad has been sent after Talyn, injuring them both in its last attempt at capture. When he's left alone with Aaron, Grace reveals his other piece of news. The Retrieval Squad is headed by none other than Senior Officer Zalak's son, Aaron's mother. So we have a season-long plot, I guess, or at least a new normal
an arc plot. Yeah.
Or yeah, we have a new arc, I guess. In addition to the two Crichtons, is now we are being hunted, or Talyn's crew is being hunted by Zalak's son, Aaron's mom, who we haven't heard from in a long time, but we got to see the flashback via the hologram that Talyn recovered in this episode. You were telling me that you think that Aaron's mom's a pretty lady?
No, not that she's a pretty lady, that she's bae, which I don't use that word lightly, okay?
We take words like that very seriously here
yeah.
at ScapeChatz.
I think she's going to be cool.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Because we only see her in shadow, so I was like, kind of confused when you were like, I thought you meant like she's pretty attractive, and I'm like, I don't even know.
Listen.
She could be.
Who knows? And that's not really my place to say.
Yeah, exactly. So that basically, does anything else, because I was thinking maybe we should just like cover that corner of the plot, because it's pretty self-contained for most of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of has the worry about like, my mom, is she alive? Why is she chasing us? And in the video, we learned a thing that I thought we already knew, which is that Aaron was conceived not out of necessity for the Peacekeeper army, but out of love between her mom and dad, Zalax and Talyn. Her dad, Talyn.
Yeah, we did know that, but this is the first time we're seeing it
right
in the flesh. I think it was a reminder for us.
Yeah, it is important. It's going to be an important thing in terms of establishing her arc for the show, so I think it's good that they kind of consolidated it into one scene.
Yeah,
and
but I was sorry, go ahead.
I wrote a note later that said, Aaron is a good mom for Talyn, who is named after her dad and is in there escaping from her mom. It's very weirdly like cyclical.
Yeah. I was confused because Aaron knew that also, right? She was the one who told John, I think in The Way We Weren't, that she was conceived out of love, right?
Oh, maybe.
I think that's how that happened. So I was unsure of why Grace was showing her the video. I guess because it showed that like the Peacekeepers knew about it happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she felt at the time it was a secret. I don't know.
And maybe something like, why are they chasing Talyn? Oh no, they're chasing Talyn because he's not working for the Peacekeepers anymore.
Yeah.
And neither is Grace.
Yeah.
Okay. That covers most of that stuff though, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Aaron's mom stuff is going to heat up in the near future, I'm sure. Yeah. But now it's just, that's what's happening. Here she comes.
Here she comes, the big bad, the big mom. I wrote here, the big mom. I really like Jewel as a scientist. We saw her in this episode, kind of as a healer and as a researcher in the exact way that Zahn actually was in a lot of the earlier episodes. But I just think that Jewel, it's great to see her doing stuff because, like, we just talked last week about how we hope that she gets more time to do things and not have things happen to her. And these 2 episodes are definitely like the creators understanding that and trying like to nurture her personality and let her do things and accomplish things as a smart, intelligent person.
Well, yeah. I mean, she's being relegated right now to that role because it was the spot that was left open. So
yeah,
in that sense, I'm a little bummed that the crew is kind of sticking her in that corner. But it's nice to see she's being the scientist and the medical person in a way that is totally different from how Zahn was. Because Zahn was very calm and self-assured and serene, and Jewel pretty much exclusively is like, I'm incredibly smart, but also I don't know what I'm doing.
I might blow everything up. Whoops.
Whoopsie.
There wasn't much to say about that other than, like, that's kind of all Jewel does in this episode. I wanted to talk real briefly about those aliens, the Renniks, I guess, and their planet, which essentially is full of walls made of bubble wrap. I thought that was like a really cool touch. Just a bunch of bubbles on the wall, and
it's
everybody's
like those candies, the paper on the paper.
Oh, like paper candy? I think that's what that's called.
Yeah,
I think.
whatever.
I know what you're talking about. But I also liked that their whole aesthetic was black coats with very, very high like anime collars and like strong makeup. It's a really cool visual style that gives them this cool, like, that, you know, Crichton calls the dad at one point, or he calls them the Gaudis, which is like a pretty appropriate, like, they seem like an Italian mob family or something, but in space, in the Farscape way that they would do that.
Right, exactly.
Which makes sense because of the whole relationship between Tolvin and Sarova. Like, they clearly like each other, and they kind of want to fuck over their dad, but he is the boss. He even looks like kind of like a Don Corleone sort of character with his whole, like, big breathing tube.
Yeah. The kids want to fuck each other over also.
True.
They're not unified against the dad.
So they're not working together. That was one of the questions that I was positing to you.
No, the idea is that the dad, so she explains this to John when they meet. The dad unified the planet, which was fractured before, and he says that when he dies, they are meant to share control, and she suspects that her brother will try to take control, and so they're both, she and her brother are both trying to rule just unilaterally and win over each other. So right from the outset, the brother doesn't like the Moya crew because of the whole incident that happens with Dargo and Chiana. But then he's bombing the Bonosphere.
Yes.
with the gas, the high
where the YouTube concert is playing and they're putting the album on your phone without your permission.
Right. He's bombing the Bonosphere, attacking Moya, and then John intimidates the dad into making it stop.
Right.
So then from that point forward, the brother is trying to, in his sister's suspicions, he's trying to engineer a scenario in which he provokes the Moya crew to attack them again so that he can kill them, prove that he was right and his sister was wrong.
And that way he can have all the power.
Right.
Fun.
Yeah. And meanwhile, his sister wants that to not happen, so she looks right and he looks wrong.
Which technically happens.
Yes. Sort of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Very sort of. One of the coolest things about that race, though, is that they have these aliens called Stranites. Everyone's accent on this show makes it really hard to hear what that word is, because they're like Stranites, Stranites, and you're like, I kept thinking they were saying like Strainits or something. It's Stranit for people. They're the headcrab zombies, except from Half-Life, except they're also lie detectors.
Right.
So they just keep a pool of them in any like important room, and they are like sci-fi lie detectors, and they're just like, oh, snap. It's like going to what's that, Legal Seafoods, and they're like, oh, pick your meal, and you just pick one up, and you're like, that's what I want. I want a lie detector fish. And
the little stinger turns red when they're cooked.
Yes, that's how you know it goes ding, and then it shakes, and you're lying, but you're also going to get a delicious dish.
Right.
Yeah, when you put them on someone's face, if they tell the truth, then nothing happens, but if they lie, then the thing can detect, like, brainwaves. Or, I love the way they describe it. They say it can detect cognitive dissonance, which is a great way of describing
Which
that.
could be more than just lying.
True. Because cognitive dissonance...
If you're undecided about something, you get killed.
You ask someone, like, what do you want for dinner tonight? Damn it.
Yeah.
Dead. I guess in that case, you wouldn't put it on their face unless they were going to say everything and be sure of it. But then they also say, like, maybe some people can negate these and keep their brainwaves, like, passive enough that it doesn't work, but that does not happen. Uh-oh. They're very much like the thing that Farscape does a lot, where they introduce something that could kill someone, and then, of course, it kills someone.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what fiction does.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Black Crichton, I guess? Crichton Black? Or no, John Black, that's what it refers to. I was like, what? That doesn't sound right. He's doing all the wheeling and dealing, and then at one point he gets, he's like in the club with Shiana and Dargo? Yeah. And he gets a phone call on a banana phone. It's like, it reminds us that Crichton's an Earthling, because he's like, is this a proposition? No, it's a phone. Got it.
It's a phone. Okay, great.
Yeah. And he talks to Sarova. She's like, oh, meet me like 2 feet away. I'm literally right behind the building that you're in right now. Also, I own the building you're in right now. And then she turns it off, like clicking the bottom and like twisting it. It's like, it's a bop it. It's just a bop it.
It is a bop. It's a very sharp bop it.
Yeah, it's a sharp single function bop it. And he goes to the back, and then there's that great shot where he's like looking behind him in the back alley, and Chiana and Dargo are like hooded, and they like go into a corner, and then behind them is Sarova, and I'm like, she clearly saw them. She was looking at Crichton. They walked in front of her and go, we're sneaking out of the way. But she was right there.
She just wanted to make that entrance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of doing the wheeling and dealing of like, oh, how are we going to fuck over my brother? Let's make sure, like, don't mess up so that he doesn't get power. And then you see some blue slime on the floor.
Yeah. This flubber. This, like, creepy flubber.
It looks so silly. It's like blue sponge foam. Floam on the floor. And it's kind of like, it's floam and it's crawling towards them. And then a red floam goes up to it. And when the red and blue floam connect, boom, boom.
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom. They make a boom, boom. And then the room blows up. And then Crichton is injured.
Bang, bang,
Sarova
into the room. You know that song?
I do, bang.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Right, it's that song actually starts playing. It's weird. It hasn't come out for like 10 more years. That Crichton goes back to Moya. Moving on. It goes back to Moya injured and then gets a blood transfusion. I love there's a scene, I'm nitpicking right now, where he's like, I need a blood transfusion. Jewel, give it to me. You have similar biology. And she's like, kind of, but not really. You have a fucking clone. Just borrow his blood. It's like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
He's literally you. You wouldn't even have to worry about it. It's so easy. It's a fun blood transfusion.
I mean, they hate each other and they want the other one to die.
But why? Because they want to be the real one?
Yeah.
He's going to save your life, though.
I know. Well, then he does. And he looks like a nice guy.
Yay. So that happens. And that Crichton is injured. And then the other Crichton, this is the part where I was like, holy shit, if this is like the kind of narrative conceit that they're going to do with the two Crichtons, this is really fucking clever. The other Crichton goes back to the Renix and is like, I didn't meet you before, and your daughter, the girl, Sarova, never talked to me. And they're like, really? And he puts the lie detector on himself. And he's like, cross my heart and swear to die, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's true.
It's super duper true. And they're like, oh, I guess that's great then. And then, is it right then and there that they put it on the sun?
Yeah, it's like cutting back and forth. So that's the conflict in that room is going on, and it turns a little violent, and then they put it on the sun, yeah.
And then they're also cutting to the Chromaxton being put on Talyn.
Yeah.
Which, you can't do that, because the Chromaxton is poisoned. And then really cool Farscape mechanics thing, where they're like, we can unpoison it, but we have to filter it through Moya to depoison it.
Remember that time we did that?
Have they done that before?
Yep. They said, they were like, can we filter out like we did before?
Do you remember what episode that was?
Nope. I don't. Well, it was like Aaron was dying.
Oh, yeah. It's totally plausible, and it's great that they're like reusing the same rules. That's like a good thing, but shows consistency, but I thought that was smart. And then they filter it through her, and there's that like funny, just physical moment where, because we're talking about like what is the drug called again? What is the dumb numbing drug that we're talking about? Chromaxton they call like to say that like the thing that's poisoning it is also a downer, so it's an upper and a downer, and Talyn can't handle that, so they give it to Moya, and then it's like Jewel pouring it into the thing, and Chiana's like, you're spilling, and she's like, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
More good Chiana Jewel dialogue. And then the red bean bags of pop rocks get taken there, and then in the other plot, the son is like, I don't think I'm lying to y'all, and then the dad is like, wait a minute, I feel like my son is lying to me. He's probably not a nice man.
Yeah, by the way, I forgot, people could lie to this thing.
Yeah, very conveniently, by the way, when it matters the most, you can totally cheat the lie detector test if you really need to. So goofy. Wait, but we almost missed the best line of the whole episode.
What's that?
Which is Dargo and Crichton.
Oh my god.
Is that in this scene? Is that like when they're busting into the room?
Yeah,
Yeah. They bust into the room together. I really need to find a clip of this. I will find a clip of this at some point. People will find it or hear it somewhere in this episode. But Crichton like stops the guy, and he's like, "Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?" And then Dargo's like, I'm your daddy.
The line is, you've been lying to your daddy, boy, and you know you shouldn't lie to your daddy. It's gonna stop. Who's your daddy? Come on, you know who your daddy is. Who's your daddy? Dargo, tell him who his daddy is. I'm your daddy. I'm your daddy. And
it's the most perfect John and Dargo relationship moment.
It's so funny.
And the way that Simcoe delivers the I'm your daddy is really cute. And yeah, they go in and then they put the lie detector thing on that kid's face, and they're like, "Hey," or the dad is like, "Hey, are you fucking the family over?" And he's like, "Father, I would never." And he's like, "But yes or no, are you fucking the family over?" And he's like, "No, I'm not." And then he just gets jabbed in the fucking forehead.
Oh man, that's cool.
Especially because, and they talk about this in the Illustrated Companion, those strands are cool without having to move. Like, they're creepy and disturbing just because they exist. So as soon as they move, you don't know if the way they're going to kill you is like, oh, poison's going to come out of its, like, center sac. Or like, oh, it's going to, like, squeeze you to death. No, it's very simple and very efficient. It just pokes you with the top one into your forehead and then boink, no more brain, you're done.
Right.
It's very efficient. So that guy's dead. And then they're like, oh, I guess the girl should be the, like, boss. And then the girl goes to do some she goes to do some, like, backroom dealings. And, who's she working with? It's Aaron's mom. She's given up information about the kids to Aaron's mom. Also, she's not a she's a xenomorph. She sheds her skin, and apparently that, like, race of xenomorphs who have a name, they're going to be very important soon, so I should know the name. Kalartas, which is what we're later going to find out they're called.
Yeah, so I was confused about that moment. So if anybody else was, I'm just going to clarify exactly what happened. She was real. She was a real person.
Yep. And she got killed.
Yeah, and then she got killed in the exploding thing and was replaced by that monster.
Oh, she was killed during the explosion? I thought this was like before the episode.
No, the explosion was not caused by her brother. It was caused by this thing, this shapeshifter.
Oh, the Kalarda. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's that part where she's looking up at somebody and they're off camera and she's like, "You've come to finish the job."
Oh.
And then that thing kills her and poses as her.
And then that thing is now the ruler of this area?
No, she's just like, that thing just leaves. It's working on the team with Aaron's mom.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the, like, big scary moment at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that a lot of the attractive side character women on the show have turned out to be evil, if not all of them?
Yeah, and they also always, like, put their leg on John's leg at least once.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always weird flirting, and it's always like you gotta flirt. We were talking about this over text earlier when I watched this. I was like, wow, having two Johns not only means you get to split the plot, but it means you get to always, in every scene, have, like, the brash, angry white dude that gets to, like, call all the shots.
Yeah. That's something that we can talk more about in the context of the crews splitting. But, yeah, just John as, like, the white man has a lot of status and kind of, like, domineers a lot of scenes. And so it's a little, I don't know. I find it problematic that he's in the whole show. I get that he's a point of view character, but I feel like we're so far past him being a default point of view character that it's a little iffy that we should have two of him.
Because do we need two of him? Like, who do you think could have been a more interesting clone? I feel like two Aarons would have been really neat.
It would have. I don't know that I would clone anybody else, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think it does make sense to clone John because he has more interplay with other characters because of the way he's been built into the plot.
Yeah.
Like he is a central character on the crew. But I think I'm more saying that like we could have done this kind of crew split without John in both places.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But I guess if you had to pick somebody, John makes sense. I feel like I wouldn't want two Aaron sons.
Two Dargos wouldn't really accomplish much.
Two Dargos wouldn't really make sense. Maybe two Chianas? Maybe. Yeah. So, okay. I guess two Johns makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And we can get a lot of mileage out of it. But I'll be curious to see... My suspicion... So we've only seen a Talyn episode. And this is jumping ahead a little bit. But we've only seen a Talyn episode. We haven't seen a Moya episode. My suspicion is that these Talyn episodes are going to be mostly about Aaron and John. Because the people that are with them are Rigel and Stark, and they're kind of like goofy, silly characters. They have to share a bedroom. It's funny. And then Crace is kind of Crace. Like, he's separate from a lot of stuff, and he's just going to do the Crace thing.
Yeah.
And then I would guess that the Moya episodes are going to be more balanced among the crew. Like, we'll see more interplay among Dargo and Jewel and Chiana and Crichton, without John necessarily stepping up and being the central character of those episodes. So as long as that Crichton's role is a little more equitable, I think I'll be okay with it.
Right, it makes the most sense. Everything you said makes the most sense for how they're handling it. In my head, this is just an opinion. The Crichton that's with Talyn feels like the Crichton that we've known. But again, I haven't seen a Moya episode, so I don't know how that Crichton's going to interact within that corner of the crew. And I don't think it's a question that needs to be answered, like which one of them was the original, because it doesn't matter anymore. But I still, for some reason, just because I think that the Crichton-Aaron relationship is like the most essential one on this whole show. That's why it like makes sense to me that one is the quote more real Crichton, I guess. But alas, on Moya, John Green tells Dargo that John Black took Winona and his notebook. So there's kind of a lot of like bickering of like, hey, you took my stuff. It's not nice. And then again, the second half of the title of the second episode, Green-Eyed Monster, starts being introduced here, where they're jealous that one of them gets to be living with Aaron now, and the other one has to just live with the cool kids. And then the last scene is on Talyn, where Rigel is angry that there will be no contact with Moya until the retrieval stuff is over. So they're separating so that they can keep Talyn safe. Is that the idea?
I think they're separating so that they can keep Moya safe.
Okay.
And yeah.
Why are certain crew members staying on Talyn?
Okay, so the ships are separating to keep Moya safe. The crew is separating to keep Talyn safe. Yes.
Okay. So we
like,
need people on there to take care of Talyn.
Yeah, because Crace can't do it by himself anymore.
As we learn later.
Yeah.
And then the last scene is Aaron telling the John that's with her that her mother commands the squad, and they kind of like fill in those blanks for each other, and then she says, I will not let the peacekeepers capture Talyn, even if it means I have to kill my mom.
It's like, whoa, okay.
Whoa, spooky. Also, real quickly, Stark gets a great line where he's talking to Rigel, and I like the idea that Stark is being characterized now as the crazy guy, because he is just talking about like, oh, we're gonna live in a room together, and he's like, my side, your side, my side, your side, your side, my side. It's his like exchange with himself when he's trying to talk to Rigel about the room. But that is the episode, basically.
Yeah.
Did you have any other points?
Just to talk about Stark for a minute, I guess we're probably not going to be satisfied with how Stark is handled. Yeah. I can't foresee a future in which Stark becomes a more well-balanced character. Not in terms of sanity, but in terms of importance to the plot. But I don't know. I guess I wish we could. I want to be able to explore his grief a little more, because it feels too easy to write off his zaniness as him being crazy, as opposed to him being stricken with grief, and it's hard to parse where that's coming from. Because Stark has just had a lot of shit happen to him, like with all of the Bennick slaves dying. And that was kind of, shuffled off. There's this huge amount of death, and he's the bearer of all of it, and we don't really investigate it that much.
And he's died. He saw all his people die, then he died in the Roshan episode, then his partner died.
Right.
So he's just, like, death defines him in a lot of ways, and you make the good point about, like, I think in this scene that I'm referring to, his sanity is kind of played as a joke. There are moments with him and Rigel and Green-Eyed Monster where I thought that they are improving that characterization and kind of relating it back to his grief, but they haven't gotten there in the best way yet. Yeah.
And I don't know that we will or that we even need to, but it's something that I think about whenever I see Stark on screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I foresee him and Rigel being a very entertaining pair.
And it brings some levity to the Talyn team, because the trio of, like, the weird love triangle of Crace and Aaron and John is kind of, like, a little bit heavy.
Yeah.
Heavier than, like, the show has been for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Very emotional. Emotions are really high. So, like, if they didn't have two silly characters, then that would be a little bit excessive on the Talyn episodes.
Right.
But we'll talk about the first Talyn episode. But first, let's read some background information from the Farscape Encyclopedia Project.
Yeah, we're having a little difficulty loading the page, so I just wanted to say a couple other thoughts on the episode while I'm scrolling. People had cool Star Wars robes, which I appreciated. That was great.
You talking about the aliens on the planet?
Well, and before when we were talking about Dargo and Chiana walking in the alleyway.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Some cool robes there. I love the set design, like we were saying, the bubble wrap walls.
Yeah.
But also the lighting was really neat.
The show does lighting so well consistently.
Yeah. And it had like it was more, I like the more dark future look.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even look gritty necessarily. It just looks dark and cool.
I should mention, by the way, Clavin C. Harris, who wrote this episode, this is the only episode that he wrote. So this is another one-off director or writer. That's going to happen a whole lot this season. We're kind of like, we've used up the regulars for now. Ian Barry has directed this episode. This is his first episode, and then he also directs Meltdown, which is a episode we're coming up on very soon. An important one, in fact.
All right, I got the background info right here for you.
Yay, hooray.
Wayne Pigram does not appear in this episode. He didn't need to.
Yeah, I like that we went from, like, Scorpius is the most important villain on this show to, like, we need a minute. We need a minute without Scorpius.
Yeah, I like that we can use him sparingly.
Yeah.
Because then it gets to be a surprise every time when he shows back up.
Like in the one from last week?
Yeah.
The time travel? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The entire cityscape was created in the Homebush Bay Studios and by Animal Logic. No shots were filmed on location. That's cool.
Wow.
It kind of looked like a set, but in a way that I didn't mind.
Mm-hmm.
The scene of Aaron's mother's nighttime visit was initially mentioned in Family Ties. Okay, Family Ties. And finally shown as a flashback in this episode.
Okay, so they definitely did mention it that before.
Yeah. Family Ties, as a reminder for people, is season 1, episode 22. So it's towards the end of season 1.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Wanted to know. I was like, please, maybe he won't do it this time.
The Candian Truth Seeker is partly modeled on spiders and lobsters because Dave Elsey has a mortal fear of the creatures.
David Elsey? What's the Candian Truth Seeker? Oh, that's the lobster.
The
lobster
crab,
paw.
yeah.
Word, rock and roll.
Yeah. To show the various positions Corlarda could go through in its transformation, Elsey prepared a series of small models for director Ian Barry. The creepy transformation. I don't know. I didn't love it. It creeped me out, and it was kind of like... I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. It was kind of like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer meets Beetlejuice meets that scene in UHF where the scientist turns into an alien.
Oh, like kind of framey animation, you mean? Like
yeah.
Choppy? Yeah. I like that I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was just spooky.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looked like Coraline.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just straight up stop motion, so yeah.
Yeah. When Crace first wakes up and John asks him who attacked him, he says, the Plokavoids, the Skeksis? This alludes to the fact that the Holosians were actually redone costumes of the Skeksis from The Dark Crystal, a Jim Henson film.
When I heard that line, I knew I had heard the word Skeksis before. I haven't seen Dark Crystal, but I think when the Holosians were in an episode, they read the same type of trivia and were like, oh, maybe we should see Dark Crystal. We still haven't.
There you go. That's the background info.
That is the background info. There's only 2 brief things in the Illustrated Companion that I wanted to bring up. One of them being that Claudia Black was really happy with the casting of her mother and younger self, because she said she has baby pictures that look like that younger self, and she thinks that she looks like the mother, so she thought that was good casting. And then here's just your funny, this cast member's wacky moment of the episode. Ben Browder's overwhelming memory of the episode is of trying to recall which t-shirt he was meant to be wearing. For some reason, trying to track that through turned into something akin to calculus, he jokes. We had lots of debates as to who was going to get what t-shirt, and then had to backtrack through the script because they swapped clothes during the story. And then, of course, they were impersonating each other in that episode as well. So, John Crane has problems with shirts.
Yeah, there you go.
Alas. John, I think it just took such a deep breath. I need to cut all of that. I need to not compress my stomach when we record these. It's bad for my diaphragm. Anyways,
frags left.
Let's nice reference, dude. Wow,
that's a deep cut.
For all those Unreal Tournament fans that also like Farscape, there's probably a crossover.
There's probably quite a lot of them.
Yeah, same era. Can you imagine someone in a college dorm room playing Unreal Tournament 2000 or 98 and watching Farscape in the background?
Well, no, and someone's like, "Wait, we gotta stop! Farscape's on.
Farscape's on. New episode. I need to know what happens with Aaron's mom." What would it be the most for Unreal Tournament? We'll do this between episodes. Let's go to Moyabag, and we'll be right back to talk about Green-Eyed Monster.
Bye.
Good morning, crew members, and welcome to the Moyabag for episode 27 of ScapeChatz. I'm Alan, and I'm here to read your feedback and comment on it. We're going to start with Twitter, and every week we get a lovely memo from Twitter user. And this time we get one for each episode, basically. And we got one regarding different destinations, where they talk about how wormholes are a big thing on the show. We shouldn't woobify Stark. I think that's one of those things the teens say. I don't really get that. Their favorite line from the episode was, "Run back and forth and pretend you're an army." And they mentioned that the Venic Horde is going to come back in Season 4, potentially. They talk about Jewel having no chill, commenting on how we said that this would have been a good time to have Zahn, and how that is them for every episode. And Shiana crossed Jewel as their favorite pairing. Aaron's Peacekeeper Pass coming back a lot this season. And I like this comment a lot. About the rules. Yes. Farscape is made by nerds for nerds. But it's made for lit nerds and Ray Bradbury nerds, and not the people that care about rules. Well, it's made for them too, but you know what I mean. And when you talk about it with people that care about everything having rules, you have to satiate them when you don't know how to answer their questions. And they're appreciating Tammy McIntosh more on this rewatch, because they're rewatching with us. So, rock on. Regarding Eat Me, they said, "Are you telling me that the guy that wrote my 4th favorite episode of the season, Meltdown, and I Yench You Yench as a close 5th, was in a band called Machine Gun Relatio, where he goes by the name Pinky Bancroft? Because that's amazing." I believe it was Pinky Beecroft, I forget. But yeah, that's 100% true. The scary ship is just the redressed Moya set, which we pointed out. Really great use of set design there. Multiple people pointed this out. This is kind of a big correction that we got wrong. We were talking about an episode from Season 1, and we weren't sure which one it was. We were thinking of Exodus from Genesis, but we brought up A Bug's Life. Now that I think about it, A Bug's Life is the one towards the end of the season, and Exodus from Genesis is episode 2. And makeup hybrids become a thing again in Season 4. Here's a great one. The comms are down. Also, sometimes Pilot will take them down just to fuck with them, or so people can have certain private conversations. The comms being down as a narrative device feels cliche to me, but Farscape usually does it better than most shows. Chiana went full on Xena with the war cry. Hungry APs is almost better than Pina Coladas, which you'll see soon. I'm sure people know what that's a reference to. You were so close with the cloning, but I couldn't say it at the time. Do you know how hard that was? I was very close, and I like that I kind of almost nailed it. Dargo's rape is rape. I kind of hate that they played that for laughs, but I agree with Magellan that it's in the show's DNA too, and you need to ask yourself what the context is and how and why it's funny. And then finally, I was so afraid that Magellan would get spoiled for this arc. That sucks, man. We've talked about how it's at this point, we've come to accept that, like, when we watch shows like this that have stuff that can get spoiled, Magellan tends to, he'll Google one thing and then fall down a wiki hole, and then whoops, the whole show is spoiled. But it is more than a lot of shows like this about the journey, so spoilers be damned. Those tweets you can send to us at ScapeChatz on Twitter. We love receiving those, and I can reply to those anytime. We got an email this week from Mark Carner, who says, "Hi guys, I enjoy the podcast even if you provoke a little irritation when you mention how you weren't paying attention to some of the episodes and then try to discuss them. The reason I'm writing, though, is that you've mentioned twice that Crichton figures that Earth is 40 light years away from the wormhole that picks up the Three Stooges, then proceed to comment on it as if a light year was a measure of time instead of distance. Considering how far apart solar systems are, and how many are Intrepid crew visits, I have to assume that the hedge scale of speeds approaches or exceeds light speed. Mentioning that does bring to mind one thing that bugged me in Season 4 that's not really a spoiler, but from the beginning of the show they present Starburst as an uncontrolled random destination escape ability, but in one of the later episodes Pilot seems to be able to plot a course and use it to get them somewhere. This always bugged me. I'm glad you guys enjoy the show that has been my favorite since it first aired. I never really analyzed it the way you did, and others do, I just loved watching it. Good luck and thanks." Thank you, Mark Connor. This email is kind of an interesting parallel to Owens' comment about, like, there are some people that really care about the rules, and I appreciate that Mark really likes the rules on the show and wants them to stick to them, especially regarding stuff like Starburst, which is used constantly as a plot device. And if they're going to have the rules for it and like determine whether or not it goes somewhere, they should stick to that. But regarding stuff like, we don't always, like, we'll mention, like, oh, I didn't really pay attention to this episode. We're watching this show the way we would if we were just watching the show, because we've talked about it before, but this, like, entire premise of our podcast came from us doing the same thing for Buffy and Angel and all of those shows, where we would just get on Skype and bullshit about the shows. And this is just a little bit more formal than that. So I do think that it's important to hold us to a standard, and I appreciate that you're telling us that we should try to, appreciate the episodes more and pay more attention if we're going to talk about them and pull them apart. But just keep in mind that, like, we are not experts. We are just watching it for the first time. But thank you. That was it for emails, though. You can always send those to scapechats@gmail.com. Finally, we have the Reddit thread for last week's episode, which can be found, as always, every week at reddit.com/r/Farscape. And we got another back and forth, wonderful back and forth, actually, between Blue Spear and TRK2, who are becoming my favorite kind of group or pairing of people that are kind of critiquing each other and discussing the episode in very interesting and intellectual ways. In this one, basically, it's a long thread about the idea of cloning in this show, and how the villain of that episode, of Eat Me, says that they are Karvak, and how Karvak says that he is making clones that are the same as they were before, and yet they are clearly the Zerai that are on the ship. I'm trying to remember all the names, excuse me. And they are clearly not sane anymore. But then there's the argument that maybe they're not sane anymore because they watched other versions of them get eaten and this kind of thing. And so if you clone someone who's lost the sanity because they saw their clone get eaten, does the next clone have less sanity to start with? And is there any way to make two clones that are actually the same if every single one of them sees something different when it comes into existence? So it's a lot of back and forth on that. I cannot read all of this, but it ends with Blue Spear saying, "At the end of the day, no matter what we think about, we have to buy into it if we want to be able to enjoy the show, and I'll always be open to hear any explanation that digs deeper than it's space magic. And sometimes Farscape asks us to accept space magic anyhow. Psychic trauma seems just as reasonable as Karvak doesn't seem to be doing exactly what he says he's doing, so you'll get no quibble from me." Very mature, multifaceted discussions going on the Reddit thread. I really appreciate those, and they're so fun to read, and I'm going to try and contribute to more of them as we go on. Got The Locket saying, "Eat Me was definitely a disturbing episode. The thing that really stuck with me, besides the fact that there are now two Crichtons, was Chiana's reaction to being cloned and then one of her being drained. Her monologue of convincing herself that she was indeed the original and not the copy was terrifying in its implications. I'm not sure how I'd be able to handle something like that happening. Would I be able to convince myself? Or am I in fact now a copy that has to live the original's life?" And to which Keku responds, everything about Eat Me was creepy. We had body horror, insanity, isolation, a sense of being hunted, and an existential crisis all in one episode. I'm going to re-ask the question that we asked in the episode last week, which is, do people know why Eat Me was considered the most controversial episode of Farscape besides the creepiness and the rape scene? Or do y'all have opinions on the controversy? Because we all agree that it's creepy and weird, but this is just a different thing for me to kind of like push the listeners in a different direction of their discussion. And the top comment was from Bari Cord Reality. And this says, I thought Different Destinations was a really solid episode with great writing, but Eat Me was the only Farscape episode that left me feeling nauseated while watching it. This episode is very Farscape in that the writers are willing to take an idea that another show might play around with for an episode, then kind of have a reset switch that turns things back to normal at the end. Nope, not Farscape, they just run with it, and take things to such great length. It's super ambitious and often borders on sheer lunacy, but that's what I love about this show. I agree with you, Bari Cordiality, and thank you for your comment. Once again, those were from the Reddit thread at reddit.com/r/Farscape. Thank you all so very much for sending this feedback, and you're all wonderful. And I'm going to turn it over back to past Magellan and Allen as they discuss the first Talyn exclusive episode of the season, Green-Eyed Monster. And we're back. We also watched Season 3, Episode 8, Green-Eyed Monster this week. It was written by Ben Browder, directed by Tony Tills, and it aired June 22nd, 2001. First of all, whoa, we're recording this one day after this episode's 15th anniversary.
Whoa!
Which is pretty awesome, because we're doing this on June 23rd. But yeah, Ben Browder wrote this episode.
You're telling me Ben Browder wrote an episode where John Crichton kisses Aaron's son?
And he gets to be like in most of the whole entire episode. Yes, I am saying that. This was his first writing gig for like an actual thing. He had written scripts before, but this is the first thing that he got like published, I guess.
Like he'd written episode scripts, but they hadn't made it to episode. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think he had just written TV scripts. Like, you know how that's how you learn to become a good writer.
Okay,
you just write scripts. Yeah. So, and he only ever wrote one other episode, which is John Quixote from season 4. So, what did you think of Green-Eyed Monster?
I dug it. I mean, there are a few different factors to consider here that make it different to talk about than episodes we have previously. One is this new paradigm of the crew is splitting, which I am really fond of in an abstract kind of intellectual or literary way, and I'm a little bummed about because we don't get to see every character every week. But I don't know. I mean, we talked about this before. You and I have watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and when we watched it, we watched Angel concurrently in parallel. So we've had that experience of flipping back and forth, and it engineers a kind of fondness for the characters that you aren't with. So when you come back to them, it's like, oh yeah, these guys, I like these guys. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it's contributing to my feelings about this episode. So that's one thing. I think I want to speak to Ben Browder's writing a little bit, because I did like it a lot. But it also felt, I don't know, there's something about it that felt a little bit more direct than, or felt more direct in terms of how it dealt with the Aaron-John relationship than I think people have been in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've been talking about how they, in the last couple episodes, when they reintroduced Aaron's son, were kind of waffling on whether or not their relationship was going to persist the way it used to. And this episode felt very much like, nope, it's the way it is. They're in love, and they're going to stay in love, and just get used to it. Yeah. We're not going to like build to it anymore. We're here.
And it was coming from a place of familiarity with the characters, but also it did feel like it had a genuine affection for the characters that was influencing it to move towards maybe a neater reunion, I guess. Right. Like it kind of felt like a wish fulfillment. Or I'm not saying that like Ben Browder is like, I've got to write a script where I get with the girl. It's not necessarily what I'm saying, but he's within the character and he wants something good to happen for his character, right?
Right.
And I think he understands that people want to see them together, so there's a little bit of that aspect to it as well. In a good way, but this episode it feels like it's giving us something that we want in a way where it's like, hey, I know that you want this, so here you go.
Yeah, I pointed out in a lot of my notes how this seems like a pretty clean episode, unlike a lot of weirder Farscape episodes.
Yeah,
because
clean is good.
It is immediately picking up from part 1. It feels basically like a part 2 in terms of like, but now we're only focusing on Team Talyn. I think the fact that we used to call them Team Moya is appropriate now that they are actually 2 separate teams instead of it being the only team, like us against the world. Not that they're against each other, but you know what I mean. And the ending especially, which we'll get to, felt like they would have never written this on Farscape the way it is, unless it was like at the end of a season or something. Like to just have this like really touching emotional core moment felt like something out of like season 1 or like a romantic comedy where it had that moment with the star. And I really appreciated that moment. I think the show needs more of that, because in order for us to invest emotionally in these characters, we need to have moments where they can just exist passively with each other and kind of like address their relationship up until this point, which is what they do there.
I think I give Farscape a lot of credit for keeping an emphasis on character while moving us through plots or through contrivances that express character in unique and new ways. And this episode is kind of saying, well, you know what? You can just have a character-based episode where it's the most basic situation.
Yeah.
One guy is jealous that the girl he is in love with had sex with somebody else.
Yep.
Plain, like that's what it is. There is the like hand of friendship thing going on, but that is a thinly veiled metaphor for the also thing that he sees literally, which is sex.
And commitment also.
Yeah. Right.
There's even like elements of like wanting to be the parent because as we learn in this episode, Talyn is kind of like orchestrating a lot of the conflict because he wants his dad to be with the person that he thinks is his mom. So in a way, he's the reason that footage gets doctored because he wants to like establish this kind of like Shakespearean conflict of jealousy and hard, sad romance. You can tell this is a Ben Browder script because there's a scene at the beginning where just John and Grace are just fighting, and they're fighting like they were in season 1, where they're like, "You asshole! No, you're annoying." And then he's like, "You're not, accommodating me on the ship that much." Like John's kind of like a whiny baby for a minute there, and he's like, you keep the shower so cold, you're freezing the boys off," which is a good line. And then Aaron has that amazing slam dunk of a line. She just looks up and she goes, "Talyn, you've seen them both naked. Perhaps you can tell them who's bigger." And then she just kind of like does a little wry smile kind of towards the camera. And you're like, damn. I didn't get her line in this episode. But before we get into that, I just want to do the quick, this one's even shorter than the last one, summary of the episode. So these are fun. Separated from Moya, Crichton's temper is fraying as he finds himself stranded on Talyn with half the crew. His anger is further fueled when he starts to believe that Crace is playing deliberate mind games, sending DRDs in to plague him and stealing his gun, Winona. Crichton confronts Crace, and the two headstrong men erupt into an argument, oblivious to the impending danger outside the ship. When Stark and Rigel return from a recon mission, they find that Talyn, with Crichton, Aaron, and Crace on board, has been swallowed by a Budong. While the Bannock and the Hynerian play cat and mouse to avoid the same fate, Crichton and Aaron use a torpedo to anchor Talyn to the interior of the Budong, preventing them from being swept into the huge creature's fiery stomach. While they catch their breath, Crichton searches Crace's quarters. To his horror, he discovers a vid chip showing Aaron and Crace recreating. They banging out. The Budong is a metaphor for
the Budong.
The Budong is just like the white whale from what's it called, Moby Dick, where it's just like it's a metaphor for impotence. Like, which one of us is going to come up with the
Budong? So Budong, Moby Dick.
Good. You're right. Those are two things that both reference male genitalia. That's absolutely true.
Thanks, dude.
That's not a moon. That's a Budong. It's a good line.
Is it?
Is it a good line? I wasn't sure. Aaron is a good... Yeah, then I wrote the Aaron is a good mom line that I referenced earlier. Oh, so a lot of this episode is, again, John feeling like super jealous of everyone else. And there was a really, really clever Tony Till's visual moment where they describe that, or where he kind of like visualizes that jealousy, because Crace is telling Aaron like, "Oh, we're going to try and instill you in the ship as well, so you and I can kind of like be partners, and we're going to be Aaron's parents together. It'll be great." And then John's like, that's a bunch of bull hockey. That seems unfair that you're going to take her away from me. And then, like, right after he says that, it cuts to a shot of, on the left is Aaron's son, and on the right is Crace, and they both have the exact same type of ponytail, and they are, like, the same height and the same shape, like, physically. And then John is smaller in between them, and it feels like the two of them are, as entities, are, like, swallowing him. It's a very striking, brief shot. But again, Tony Tills really knows how to like frame drama between these three people. I also just Crace's ponytail is hilarious to me because it's like a piece of rock. It doesn't move. It doesn't look like hair. It looks like he has something stuck to the back of his head. But what else happens in this episode? Do you remember any like particular scenes that you liked or things that you want to talk about?
We could talk briefly about Rigel and Stark, just their interactions.
Those kooky kids, the Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, as I referred to them earlier.
They're on their little transport pod exploring, I guess. It's another one of those those episodes where somebody begins in the transport pod and we don't really need to explain it. They're cruising around. Yeah, they're just there. They're messing with each other. We have a line in there where Stark's like, "You're loose," and Rigel says, "Not as loose as Chiana," and we move past it. And yeah, they just have an interplay where Rigel tries to tear out the comms and convince Stark that it's time for them to leave. Classic Rigel thing of he's looking for any chance to cut and run. And Stark gets to have the idea that saves everyone.
Yay.
It was spurned by the fact that Rigel puked on him.
It's puke! Do it again! He like shoves his hand down Rigel's throat in a very funny moment.
Yeah. So they're a fun pair. Because Rigel gets to be curmudgeonly without that threatening anything. And Stark gets to be crazy in a way that ends up being productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to what I was saying earlier, where I felt like this episode kind of took Stark's personality and took it places that were good and like useful. I
also like the way that he says boodong.
How does he say it?
It's something like, it's a boodong. Just whatever. It's like boodong. Australian.
Yeah.
They get to have that great scene where they're kind of outrunning it and it's swallowing ice. I thought that was really fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Stark has this mad energy about him.
There's a part, I'm referring to Stark at the end, where Crichton is like gonna get like potentially killed, and he's like, "You are going to die. You are most definitely gonna die." Or no, he's telling like Talyn, like, "You're gonna get swallowed by the ship."
Oh yeah, and Talyn is freaking the hell out.
Talyn's fucking crying and screaming. And they're like, chill. Stark's like, "You're dead. You're definitely dead. You're so dead. We're all going to die." And they're like, "Oh my God, this is such a bad combination. Everything has gone wrong."
Yeah, so that part, those guys had a lot of fun. We can talk a little bit about Crace and what's going on with him. He's covered in lesions.
Oh no.
Spooky lesions, boy.
There's a picture that I sent Magellan a shot of from the Illustrated Companion that's just him looking so stressed, so confused, so shirtless. Because apparently we learned that he is asking Aaron's son to join him in this piloting, or what is it called, hand of friendship with Talyn, not just because he thinks that she's a good mother, but because he can't do it on his own anymore, because Talyn is taking control of him.
Yeah.
But
that's
what?
Cool.
It is cool, and it is the kind of like natural conclusion of this thing that we keep talking about, which is like, wow, the ships on this show are people, and if they're people, then they can enact their own will. They don't just follow the whims of the person.
And they can do bad things and not just good things.
Yes, Talyn is kind of the villain of this episode.
Yeah, he's sort of like a HAL 9000 thing going on.
Yeah, that's a really apt comparison, because they do bring up 2001: A Space Odyssey in the Illustrated Companion in terms of like how they frame some of the stuff in Talyn's head. Or in the hallways. So why does Crace get the lesions on his back, though? Is that just because Talyn's like hurting him, telling him to hurt himself?
No, I think Crace explains that as when he tries to resist Talyn's control, it physically harms him.
That's pretty dark.
So that he has those lesions because he's exerting so much mental power, and it's weighing on his body.
Right. And that relates also to the wonderful, wonderful scene where Aaron plugs into Talyn for the first time, and she like opens her eyes and she's like, "It's so beautiful. I can see everything."
Yeah.
I find that concept really interesting, and it's even like visually a lot cooler than it was in in the Rashomon episode in season 2, because I don't know, in that one it felt like Talyn was like this weird fun house of weird buttons and metal springs, and one of them plugs into your head, and then he has like weird turrets. Whereas in this, it's like it is one plug that goes into the back of your head and has like a couple lights on it. And now the way they visualize Aaron being plugged in is that they have Talyn vision, which was a really cool visual effect that Ben Browder refers to as Tilsy vision in the Illustrated Companion, because he thought it was really cool looking and thought it was a kind of like a Tony Tills visual mark. And that means that she can see everything in the ship. And she has that moment where she can hear the comms, and the first thing they hear is Rigel yelling at them or something. It's like, oh, Trace takes over and he's like, Hynerian, really? Right now? Like, come on. We had a beautiful moment, and then you came in. That's a wonderful, wonderful moment. That's very memorable.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is Claudia Black's performance, but
Talyn also feels bigger than before. Because I think before we've limited Talyn to the bridge, to that sort of control room.
Yep.
But now he's getting hallways, and there's much more complex interior to Talyn.
Talyn is a maze of hallways and plugs and cables, and there's that whole like they put their hand over the door scanner, and they're like, Talyn, let me in. And you have to ask Talyn, but you also have to ask Grace.
Like, it seems like those doors never open. Like, I don't think they did that once in the episode, and it worked.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of technology isn't cool unless we see it successfully work once. If it only ever doesn't work, it's kind of like the comms.
The comms just never function.
The comms would. I actually wrote in my notes here somewhere, we could turn the comms getting taken down into a drinking game at this point. Because it happens often enough for dumb enough reasons that it's just like, the comms are down, like we talked about last week. But Talyn does definitely look bigger. They got more hallways in him, and it's definitely a different set than Moya. At least I think. We didn't know about that with Eat Me though, so anything is possible. I wanted to ask you another plot question though before I get to all of my weird quotes. So at one point, Grace leaves and tries to release the cables that are connecting Talyn to the whatever it's called, the big jumpy, the big monster.
The Budong.
The Budong. How can I forget the Budong? Why does he try to release those cables? To kill Talyn?
No. So Talyn panics when Stark is saying that they're going to die. Because the initial plan is we're going to fly through the Budong's stomach and out its butt. That's our plan. Okay. And Stark says, no, you can't do that. Their stomach is a hot volcano inferno place, and you would melt and die.
Right.
So Talyn gets scared, and Talyn wants to get free of its moorings to try and just fly the other way out its mouth, I guess. Which I don't know why they didn't do that. Maybe there was some digestive juices that would have pushed them the other way. I don't know. Talyn wants to get free. They don't want Talyn to get free because they still want to think of a new plan. So he takes control of Grace and tries to get Grace to release the tethers.
Oh, so that's him literally controlling Grace.
That's the scene where we discover that that's happening, and then Grace begs John to kill him.
Oh yeah, just like once a week now, we're also getting a character that goes, kill me. But this time it's way more sad than the cheesiness that is the pilot and Eat Me being like, kill me, they're eating my arms repeatedly. Yeah, that was a pretty. It's an important scene though. It's a great bit of drama for Grace, because I was asking you when I was confused about the sex thing before we realized later that was a doctored thing by Talyn. Why does Grace want Aaron so badly on the ship? Why? What is it as simple as he can't do it on his own because of the control stuff, or is it because he thinks that Aaron is a better mother and pilot than he is, or does he really just want to jump those bones?
He doesn't. He doesn't want to jump those bones.
I don't think so. It never seemed right to me.
I was honestly annoyed that was the thing that was bothering John the most.
Right.
Because it felt very juvenile. There's so much more going on here, and there is definitely enough meat to chew on in terms of jealousy, where it's like, oh, Aaron and Grace are going to be buds, and I hate Grace, Yeah. But then, them having sex, and then as soon as she's like, we didn't have sex, it's okay. Which I can understand it on a primal level. I'm sure if I were in John's position, I would feel similarly, but I don't know. I guess I just...
It doesn't feel like a Farscape thing, which again gets back to the fact that Ben Browder wrote the script, and he kind of can write the like jealousy of like, you slept with my partner. But as we know from watching Farscape, Aaron's son is not the type of character that would sleep around. Like she talks about in one of the first episodes of the season, like, oh, we should have sex for recreation because it's good for us. And that's like kind of planting those seeds. But
right. That's the other thing, is that this show has like separated sex from romanticism.
Totally.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Like you can be a sexual person and that doesn't have to be tied up with attachment. So I don't know.
The thing that bothered me the most about all of that was that at the very end, when Aaron's like, it doesn't really matter, or he says like, oh, it doesn't matter if you had sex or not, and she's like, no, it doesn't, and he's like, it doesn't, but, or it does. Like he still is hesitant to the last minute, and then she says, I didn't, by the way, and he's like, oh, great. Like you cared until the last minute. Yeah. If she slept around, that is it feels like an immature moment for Crichton after all we've seen him do, and it like kind of bummed me out. She's like, really, you are so beyond this. You are the character that I wish I could be, that I don't have to worry about things like romance and compassion anymore because I've found the person that matters to me and they care about me in the same way. And we get that at the end of the episode, where they kind of like confirm to each other their beliefs for each other, how they feel. But all of that plot with the infidelity just felt like a weird like soap opera kind of forced thing.
Yeah. Here's a question. Talking about Crace's motivations, what are they? Because he wants Aaron to be on Talyn so that she can help Talyn grow and develop and be under control. And also Crace's, there's this, I think he calls it cybernetic blowback or something like that. Bleed back. Cybernetic bleed back.
Mm-hmm.
But what does he want out of Talyn? You know?
This is something that I would almost say, like, we should consider going back and watching the episode where we learn that he has taken Talyn and separated him from the Peacekeepers. Because it's like, oh, we've assumed that they're together because they're kind of like two kids on the run. Like, oh, well, we're together now, and now we're also merged, so we're going to be together forever. But now as he's gotten older, he's started to realize, like, oh, I can't do this on my own. So in my opinion, and again, we've been talking a lot about, like, are the plots on Farscape easily kind of like able to connect the dots to real life issues. And I think that the stuff that Crace has going on in his head right now is very, very similar to anxieties about being a single parent. Because I think that he was very excited at first at the proposition that he could like be the person to raise Talyn and raise this like weapons ship. And like that was his reason to live. Again, getting back to the theme of the show of like finding the reason to live. But as he started to do it, he realized that it like being a parent, taking care of Talyn was like hurting him physically and taking so much out of him that he he literally cannot do it on his own anymore. And he needs that like womanly, motherly touch that only she has with Talyn. And he does I think he just wants to be able to continue doing what he's doing, but he can't do it on his own anymore. Because he wants to be a parent. He wants to see Talyn grow up.
Yeah, I can buy that.
That was my read on it, you know. That's not canonical or anything.
Yeah, I'm just... Because I wonder... I don't know. John has this lingering question of he doesn't think Crace has changed. And I think he has, probably. But it's still a question of in what way. Like, what was he before and what is he now? Because before he was fixated on revenge. And now it seems like he's still fixated on something. Maybe it's revenge against the Peacekeepers, or it's just he's fixated on Talyn, whatever it is. I'm wondering, what is Crace's arc? Like, what is the moment where it's like he has redeemed himself? Because he still seems somewhat mad, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I did have similar worries with this episode, and I think, just to look ahead a bit, like this is the beginning of an arc for Crace and his redemption arc with Talyn.
Yeah.
Because as a lot of people know, this is something that's going to end with their characters doing some sort of sacrifice. That's how I predicted it at this point. Like they're going to go out in some blaze of glory, and you're going to be like, "Oh, I love Crace," and then he's going to die.
That seems like that's the way that would happen. Yeah.
Right, and they like reference what episode it might be in the Illustrated Companion, but I don't want to look for it because I don't want to like know when to anticipate it. So I'll just say something like that. Like, they said that this is the beginning of an arc that will eventually culminate with us understanding why Grace is, or how he's changed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think it's an open question that we should keep considering in these Talyn episodes.
And I'm curious what the crew members, the listeners, think of this, like, read about Grace as a new parent. What do y'all think about that? Because that's like an idea that came to my head while watching this. So I'm curious. But getting back to the like main plot of the episode, they determined that the best new route of escape is by burning some like gas inside of the monster's stomach, and then they're gonna like propel themselves out and let it like, get all burpy.
By releasing their cesium fuel and having it come into contact with the ice that the Budong is swallowing, because that creates an explosion. But they need an ignition source, and there are deactivated missiles floating inside the stomach.
Okay. There's a funny line about that where Rigel and Stark, or like Stark is proposing the idea to Grace and Aaron, and then Rigel's like, they're not going to say yes, they're going to say no, watch them say no. And then Aaron's like, yeah, we're going to have to say no, and he's like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a fun moment.
Because he even says like, you know, what are they, Sebaceans? He's like, Sebaceans know the reaction between cesium and ice is a useless reaction. You're like, wow, thank you for explaining that to us. It's kind of a weird way to do exposition. And then they send out John to basically do that, to like drop off to get the missiles out or something, or to ignite the missiles. Yeah,
to activate the missiles, yeah.
Right. And he's outside, and then Talyn locks the door because Talyn only wants one dad. Is that the gist of why he does that?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
I think he just thinks that John is bad for Aaron.
Yeah. Jealous
like
kid.
He's distracting or he's damaging or something.
Or not jealous kid, but like kid who thinks he knows better for his parent.
Yeah.
Is the closest, again, connection. This is the point where I think it's Stark says the line that I called you at the beginning. He's like, electromagnetic candy. And I like that a line a lot. Also, Rigel took down the comms just by pulling something out, and then I took a drink because Rigel took the comms down. And then, of course, that meant that Aaron can't get to John, and he's just like, all right, open up, folks. He goes through, and then the door closes, and he's like, no! He like immediately goes from 0 to screaming. He's like, oh, please close the door. The door closed. No! Like, John, honey. I hope that picked up correctly, and I didn't just destroy everyone's ears.
Yeah, I was a little kind of bothered. Like, Crichton, at first, at the beginning of the show, I think something that we praised the character for was the fact that he was level-headed. And valued sorting things out by talking, and I think we've lost that a little bit, because we had the moment where he's at the door and it's locked, and he's like, okay, Talyn, I know Aaron wouldn't do this, like, Grace isn't that dumb, so it had to be you, and you think that he's gonna talk to Talyn and reason with him and be like, well, you don't need to do that, I'm a cool guy, but instead he just shouts at him, and calls him, I have the line here. He calls him a soulless, pin-headed adolescent pig. Which is like, just say you're sorry or something. I guess he's pissed about a lot of stuff, but I feel like he could keep a better head than that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm curious what this John does in that triangle from here on out, because as we know where the episode ends up going, Aaron's son, realizing that she only has a couple seconds left to stop Talyn from killing John. By the way, I had this moment that I texted you that like blew my mind, and I really thought they were going to do it for a hot second, which is like, because we have 2 Crichtons, we can kill John Crichton right now. We can kill the Batman.
We could kill either one.
We could totally kill either one, and there would be enough consequences that it would be sad, but it wouldn't ruin the show. They could just be like, oh, that's one way to get rid of him. So that moment, like, it had a weirdly large amount of emotional weight for me, where I was like, wait, seriously? Is Talyn going to kill Crichton?
That's true, yeah. Because in any other circumstance, you wouldn't ever believe that the star of the show could be killed.
Which we've talked about in the show since season 1, where they try to invest stakes, and you're like, no, none of this matters. They're all going to come back at the end. But here they could totally kill one of them. It would work, but they don't. Aaron takes the plug out and says, you don't need me, Talyn. You can go to college now. And I'm going to keep trying to track this whole thing. And then how does she open the door? She just, or like Talyn opens the door?
Yeah, I think so. I think she just convinces him to open it. Or Grace demands it, maybe.
Yeah. And then John is free, and they're on the ship again. And they've all grown closer as friends.
Yay.
And John mentions at one point Aunt Ruth's special Jell-O, and I forget why I wrote that line, but I thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was talking about like the goo inside of the monster's stomach.
Yeah.
And then we end with one of the cutest... I'm actually curious what you think about this scene. The star scene.
The star scene? I really liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. Because, of course, John Crichton is going to track the stars and name them. I'm surprised
That's perfect.
That hasn't happened before. That idea.
That choice felt like a deliberate recalling of the fact that John Crichton is a scientist. I think that we talk about again a lot in terms of like also like him being level-headed, but he's also a scientist.
He's an astronaut specifically. He loves space.
Right. And he gets, so this is again being like him being cute, and he has this parchment paper that he says like, I wrote all the stars on this. Actually, we can probably this whole exchange is probably somewhere.
Let me see if I can grab it.
By the way, somebody sent us a link at one point that I keep forgetting to take off of my phone and put it on my computer. There's a website that's been doing transcripts of every episode of Farscape. Oh. So specifically for moments like what we're doing right now, where we need the line and we want to just like read it, we can find that.
That would be helpful. Yeah, I can't find it. It's not on the Encyclopedia Project.
Oh, I found it. It's Green-Eyed Monster. All right, let me just go straight to the end of the script. And there we are. She says stuff about you saw the recording, and then he says, let me show you something. Come here, I'm not going to bite. This is a star chart. These are names I give the stars. And she says, they've already got names. And he says, yeah, I know, but Mintonka 3 sounds boring to me. Anyway, that's Huey, Louie, and Dewey. You see that one? That's that star right there. The bright one. That's my point of reference, my guide. And it always becomes the center of my chart. I always name it Aaron. She says, you say it's your guide? And he says, it's my one constant. Would you like to name some stars? She says, there's a lot of them. And he says, and we could take our time.
That's so sweet.
I'm a little bit teary right now. It's too good. John Crichton knows how to write, or Ben Browder knows how to write himself. It's the benefit of getting to do that kind of thing. Like, you know your character well enough that you know his like romantic quirks. And that says so much about the two of them. She says earlier, you're like a plague, John Crichton, and you have ruined my life. And yet I just keep coming back. And there's a long silence, and then she says, you can talk now, which is like her character in a nutshell. It's all of it in one scene.
Yeah.
Fuck. Honestly, that scene is like the icing of the cake that is this episode. Like, that is what makes it all worth it.
I mean, I think, it's the best part of the episode by far. And we were working the whole time to get here. The mechanics of that working can be debated and not liked, but at the end of the day, we love the John-Aaron relationship, and we do want to see them kiss at the end. And
they do.
Yeah.
So now we know that since we know that Grace isn't actually romantically attracted to Aaron, this doesn't have to be a love triangle. This can kind of just be like a 3 friends take care of their son together.
Yeah.
2 guys, a girl, and a baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically that.
Right.
I just said Magellan the transcript of
the
whole show. This is a really good website. I wish I could remember who sent this to us. It was one of the Reddit people.
Thank you, mystery Reddit people.
Thank you.
I have another line that I liked from this episode that I just wanted to bring up real quick.
Okay.
It has to do with the idea of can Grace change or not. This is another poetic moment from John. He says, I keep hearing that you've changed. I think weather changes, and we just keep making the same mistake. Remember why you're alive.
Yeah.
That was a cool exchange between the two.
Extremely cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really curious where their relationship goes, Grace and John specifically. Because then she walks in that scene and kind of like cuts it off, and you're like, I felt like they could have had something. They really could have gotten somewhere if that scene went more. Now we're just going to keep referencing this dumb transcript. But anyway.
And Grace points this out, that his and John Crichton's roles have switched in their relationship. Because it started where Grace was blinded by revenge, and John was trying to reason with him, and trying to say, I didn't mean to kill your brother. That was an accident. And now John Crichton is the one who's being irrational, who's just hating Grace for the sake of hating Grace. And Grace is trying to reason that I'm not I'm not a bad guy anymore.
It's a really cool relationship, and I think it's gonna, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but yeah, it's gonna go places.
Yeah.
John, could you read the background information for this episode, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I sure can read it. Anthony Simcoe, Gigi Edgley, and Wayne Pigram do not appear in this episode.
They don't need to keep doing that. They don't need to keep mentioning that, since at least Simcoe and Edgley are never going to appear in these episodes. I don't know. Whatever. I'm
still wondering if both Johns have a neural clone of Scorpius. I'm guessing they both do.
Yep, someone brought that up in the comments for last episode.
That they both do?
No, they were saying that's a question that you should ask. It's like a good question to think about.
Okay, well, I'm asking it again. Beginning with this episode and continuing for a number of weeks, the series alternates between the two crews, with one set of cast members taking the week off. The only exception is Ben Browder, who continues to appear in every episode. We'll see how that shakes out.
How long does... You said you don't know how long that lasts?
I don't know. I'm guessing probably... I have no idea. I don't know why I was starting to say it like I do.
It helps that we watch 2 a week, at least.
Yeah,
because again, it's sort of the Buffy Angel thing, where it's like, oh, which one did you prefer this week? Did you prefer the Chiana Dargo stuff, or did you prefer the John Aaron stuff this week? Because they're clearly going to go for different stuff tonally.
The Budong makes its second appearance after the second season episode Home on the Remains. This is the first and only living one to appear on the show. I
don't remember there being a dead Budong in that episode, but I believe it.
It was the thing that they were mining from, I think.
Oh, shit. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, cool thing to draw from a dumb episode.
Exactly.
The Budong was created entirely from computer effects. Oh, it looked cool. Jim Henson Creature Shop work was primarily on the DRDs aboard Talyn.
And those cool spacesuits.
Yeah.
Actually, no, they don't make those. Someone else makes those.
The DRDs look cool. They were a little bit different.
They mentioned at one point that Talyn makes his own DRDs and refreshes his own DRDs. That's why Crace can have them be, or Talyn can make them be annoying. Because he can't I guess he can reprogram the ones that already exist, but he's also making new ones, kind of, which is cool. They're like sperm. It's sperm. That's the joke. Moving on.
Okay. The title comes from the phrase that originates from Shakespeare's Othello, quote, "Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on."
I thought that was just because the Budong had green eyes. Yeah. That's the only reason it was called that.
That's a fun double meaning. This was Browder's first television script and was originally announced by David Kemper during a chat on the UK's Sci-Fi Channel's bulletin boards, much to the actor's surprise. Sounded like they were pretty engaged in the online community back then.
Yeah, both the actors or at least Browder and a lot of the writers and directors totally were way into that stuff. Yeah.
A new form-fitting spacesuit for Aaron's son makes its debut in this episode. It was designed by Terry Ryan. They had cool glow-in-the-dark frills or whatever.
It weirdly reminded me of the stuff from Prometheus, a movie that I didn't really like, but I did like the armor in it.
Oh, yeah. It does kind of look ahead of its time, those costumes.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Aaron's line about the interior of the Budong being pitch black is a reference Browder added to the 1999 film of the same name in which Claudia Black starred.
This is a really corny thing. Pitch Black is the first
reference?
Riddick movie. This reference is corny, but also, this is a reference to... And the second one's The Chronicles of Riddick, so I'm just gonna fight through the Skype lag that we're having right now, and I'm gonna just read this line out loud to people. What is it? Claudia Black recalls a nice little plug for my film career. When Aaron's trying to shoot the torpedo, she says, "Still nothing, pitch black." But I wasn't giving myself a shameless plug. Ben was. So Ben's trying to help out his friends, and I appreciate that.
It's just nobody would notice it unless they already knew about the movie.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh shit! Now, how is that going to sell someone on the movie?" Oh shit! I should see Pitch Black because she referenced something being pitch black.
Oh man, I hope there's a movie called Pitch Black because that's a great line.
It came out 2 years ago, and she's in it. Perfect.
Guy Gross used a full cathedral organ for the music that accompanies the Budong.
Epic music for an epic beast?
Yeah. I kind of sometimes wish I was like a music or sound effects guy on a TV show, because it sounds like they just spend their days scavenger hunting for cool sounds.
Have you ever seen that clip from the mini documentary on the guy who writes the music for Seinfeld?
No.
I need to find... I'll find you the link right after this. There's a YouTube video of it where it's like the guy has a bunch of keyboards in front of him, and he has an episode of Seinfeld up, and he said, I tried to match the cadence of Jerry Seinfeld's like way that he talks, and I tried to turn that into music. So he like watches a bit of stand up, and he plays the keyboard to it, going like he's playing it to the tune of the stand up. It's so funny.
That's
oh my
awesome.
gosh. Yeah.
Many of the unusual camera angles were created using a handheld camera and treated in post-production. An example of the technique nicknamed Tills Vision after director Tony Tills.
Yep,
he's really getting in the mug.
Yep.
Mintaka 3 is the name of the setting for the Star Trek Next Generation episode Who Watches the Watchers, written by Richard Manning.
Whoa.
So there's a little Star Trek reference for you.
Well, because also Richard Manning is a Farscape writer.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so John, that's like what is it called? The One Atom something, from where it's like the guy who plays his dad is also in a cop show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're cute. John Crane's cute.
That's all I got. That's the background info.
Coolio. I love Coolio. He's my favorite. There is not a lot of interesting stuff. Most of the stuff that's interesting in the illustrated companion is also in what you just read. But it's not in what you just read.
What?
Is the missive that we received when we were switching back to Team Moya, and on the way there we passed by a big, beautiful crimson planet called Planet Netflix. And we took a break there, and we were like, "What's here? Let's go pick up some snacks before we switch back to Moya." Where are we going next week, Magellan? What does Planet Netflix have for us?
Hold on. Let me just open this missive.
You love making me edit noise.
Season 3, Episode 9, Losing Time. After passing through a magnetic cluster, the crew experience blackouts, and Pilot has been possessed by a being pursuing an evil energy rider. What?
Whoa. Is this Ghost Rider?
Yeah, it's Ghost Rider.
Alright, it's just Ghost Rider. Sweet.
So it sounds like while Team Talyn is having like important character plots and a cohesive arc, Team Moya is just doing bullshit.
Farscape? Yep. That's actually exactly what I expected, and I love it.
Yeah. Season 3, Episode 10, Relativity. The Peacekeeper Retrieval Squad, led by Aaron's mother, Zalek's son, traces the crew of Talyn to a jungle planet where the gunship is recuperating.
Oh shit, we're getting conflict. With Mommy. John, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
Let's do some housekeeping before we take it home. You can email ScapeChatz, the show itself, and us, being the creators of the show itself, at scapechatz@gmail.com, spelled exactly like the show. You can also tweet at ScapeChatz, again spelled like the show, and you can send us stuff there. If it's under 140 characters, we have Reddit threads every week at reddit.com/r/Farscape, and we have a Tumblr, which is scapechatz.tumblr.com. And finally, you can follow me at twitter.com/Allen Ibrahim, ALLENIBRAHIM. Magellan, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at justafluke, JUSTAPFLUKE. That's me.
John, I think this was an episode, and I think it's now also time for us to get the frill out of here.